Good day, third year students. Today we are going to study Matthew Arnold's poem, The Scholar Gypsy. The title of the poem may seem a little bit weird to you. How can a gypsy be a scholar, or how can a scholar be a gypsy? But that's the charm of the poem. So let us today do the introduction to the poet and the poem. Matthew Arnold is a well known name for all of us. He is a Victorian poet, and Matthew Arnold received his university education at Oxford. He was an inspector of schools for several years and deeply concerned about education and schools in England. For 10 years, he was professor of poetry at Oxford. His early poems were published in 1849, and his poems are romantic in tone and attitude. His poetry failed to meet his own critical evaluation of poetry, but in later life he turned to social and literary criticism, and some of his best known works are Essays in Criticism, Culture and Anarchy, and Literature and Dogma. Now, this poem, The Scholar Gypsy, was written in 1853 and is about a 17th century student who leaves Oxford University to live among the gypsies and to gather the riches. Riches means to gather the experiences of the lore. Now, he says that this scholar gypsy was a student who was expelled from Oxford due to financial reasons, and he went to live with the gypsies, and he actually gained their experiences living with them, and gaining experiences and a lot of knowledge. So it is based upon a story which Matthew Arnold found in Lanville's Vanity of Dogmatizing. This poem expresses his disgust with modern life and the lack of purpose or conviction it appeared to have. There is a sad, melancholic note in this poem about the life of a homeless wanderer caught between two worlds of learning. Now, what are the two worlds of learning? One world within the four walls of the university, and the other world outside the four walls of the university in the open nature with the gypsies. The poet, in some measure, recreates Oxford and its surroundings through the detailed description of the landscape. And this poem is written in 10 lined regular stanzas. It follows an unusual rhyming scheme ABC BCA for the first 6 lines, with the sixth line being only of 6 syllables as against the 10 of the others. And the rhyme scheme of the last 4 lines is DEED. So, this poem, as I told you, is about a scholar who went to live with the gypsies. And the speaker of this poem, he describes a beautiful rural setting in the pastures with the town of Oxford lying in the distance. Now, it can also be called a pastoral poetry. What is a pastoral poetry? In which we find rural countryside setting, shepherds and shepherdesses, and cattle, fields. So, these are the major characteristics of pastoral setting of a poem. Now, the speaker of the poem watches the shepherd and reapers working among the field, and then tells the shepherd that he will remain out there until sundown, enjoying the scenery and studying the towers of Oxford. All the while, he will keep his book beside him. His book tells the famous story by Joseph Lanville about the impoverished Oxford student who leaves his studies to join a band of gypsies. Now, once he was immersed within their community, he learned a lot of secrets of their trade, of their business, of their ways and manners of living. Now, after a while, 2 of the scholar gypsies Oxford associates found him. Now, this scholar went to live with the gypsies, and after some time, two of his fellow students, maybe his classmates of Oxford, they chanced to meet him, and he told them about the traditional gypsy style of learning, which emphasizes powerful imagination. He told them that though I was expelled from the university education, but still his learning did not stop. Rather, his learning gained a practical knowledge. And his plan was to remain with the gypsies until he learned everything he could. And then he planned that he wanted to tell the gypsies' secrets to the whole world. So you can see that he wants to distribute knowledge, and whatever he gained from gypsies, he wants to spread the word to the whole world. So, regularly interjecting his own wonder into the telling, the speaker continues the scholar gypsy's story. Every once in a while, people would claim to have seen him in Berkshire moods. This whole poem is about where the scholar gypsy was seen, how he used to live with the gypsies, and how his manners and way of living changed. So, the speaker of the poem, he imagines him as a shadowy figure who is waiting for the spark from heaven. Spark from heaven means some inspiration from heaven, just like everyone else on earth is. We all are waiting for a spark, a divine inspiration from heaven. The speaker of the poem even claims to have seen the scholar gypsy himself once, even though it has been over 200 years since his story first resonated through the halls of Oxford. Despite that length of time, the speaker does not believe the scholar gypsy could have died, since he had renounced the life of mortal man, including those things that wear out man to death. Repeated shocks again exhaust the energy of strongest souls. Quote unquote. Having chosen to repudiate this style of life, the scholar gypsy does not suffer from such shocks, but instead he is free from the sick fatigue and languid doubt. He has learned actually to resist life's problems. So he has escaped the perils of modern life. He has escaped the dangers, risks of modern life, which are slowly creeping up and destroying men like strange disease. The speaker finishes by imploring that the scholar gypsy avoid everyone who suffers from this disease, lest he become infected as well. So, as we all know, during this corona period, that we avoid people generally suffering from corona, so that we may not get infected with corona. So, in the same way, he used to avoid those people who were suffering from this disease. And what was the disease? The disease of languidness, the disease of doubt, the disease of sick fatigue. So he used to remain away from those people. This poem explores one of Arnold's signature themes. And what is his signature theme? The depressing monotony and toil of modern life. It is unique that it works through a narrative. There are in fact two levels of storytelling at work in the poem, that of the scholar gypsy and that of the speaker who is grappling with the ideas poised by the singular figure. So there are two strands going on, one with the point of view of the scholar gypsy, another with the point of view of the speaker. Both levels of story relay the same message. The scholar gypsy has transcended life by escaping modern life, as he actually does. Arnold here criticizes modern life as wearing down even the strongest of men. He says that even the strongest of men in this world, they are wearied, they are fatigued, and his choice of the word disease is remarkable. So for him, this is a disease, since it implies that this lifestyle is contagious. Even those who try to avoid modern life will eventually become infected. In this way, the poem makes a comment on the perils of conformity. as the poems in this collection do. What makes the scholar gypsy so powerful is not only that he wishes to avoid modern life, many wish to do that. More importantly, he is willing to entirely repudiate normal society for the sake of his transcendence. There is slightly pessimistic worldview implicit in this idea, since it is clearly not possible to reveal in true individuality and still be a part of society. It is very tough for us. But the scholar gypsy has had to turn his back entirely on Oxford, which represents learning and modernity here, in order to become this great figure. So he had to completely shun the modern education, and yet the poem overall is much more optimistic than many of the Arnold's work, precisely because it suggests that we can transcend it if we are willing to pay that cost. But the cost is very heavy. This makes it different from the poem like A Summer's Night, which explores the same theme but laments the cost of separation and individuality requires. For all his admiration, the speaker clearly has not yet mustered the strength repudiate the world. To repudiate the world, this setting helps establish his contradictory feelings. The poem begins with the images of peaceful, serene rural life, a place where men act as they always have. They have been untouched by the perils of modernity. Pastoral imagery has always been associated in poetry with a type of innocence and purity and pure life, unfiltered humanity in touch with nature. The speaker is out in the field contemplating this type of life, the possibility of acting as the scholar gypsy did. And yet he is also studying the towers of Oxford, which is, as mentioned above, represents the rapidly changing, strictly structured world that the scholar gypsy renounced. Arnold very deftly, very dexterously expresses the speaker's split priorities through this juxtaposition. At the same time that he admires the scholar gypsy, he cannot fully turn his back on the modern world. It is the same contradiction that plagues the speaker of A Summer's Night. Now, you can compare and contrast this poem with A Summer Night. Thus, the poem overall represents Arnold's inner conflict, his desire to live a transcendent life like the scholar gypsy, but inability to totally shun society. It is not very easy for us to shun society. So, at this point in his life, Arnold felt pulled in different directions by the world's demands. He was trying to resist the infection of modernization, but it was creeping up on him nevertheless, and the pressure to conform was negatively affecting his poetry. Undoubtedly, Arnold wished he could escape in the way the scholar gypsy did. But is it easy? No. However, he was too tied down by responsibilities to ever dream of doing so. So, this was just an introduction to the poem. This is a long poem. It will take us 2 to 3 lectures to complete the poem. So, in introduction, we learned that there is a scholar who was forced to leave the Oxford University and to live with the gypsies, the vagabonds. The vagabonds are people who never settle down at one single place. But leaving Oxford did not mean that he left education, though he could not complete his degree in the formal way, but his education completed, his education continued, and maybe he was better than his fellow learners, with the fellow students. So, tomorrow we will start with the poem. Thank you.